I want to share a story with you in Mark 5 where Jesus actually ignored the voice of doubt and unbelief. And you know, I think we're going to have to learn how to recognize when God's speaking to us and when the enemy's speaking to us. And if it's the enemy, we're just going to have to say, well, I know you're a liar, so I'm going to ignore you and not pay any attention. Mark 5:22, and I want you to try to insert yourself in this story. Sometimes we just read these things, but we don't really think about it. As I go through this, I want you to pretend like you're here and you're seeing all this. One of the rulers of the synagogue, Jairus by name, seeing Jesus, fell at his feet and implored him earnestly, saying, "My little daughter is at the point of death. Come and lay your hands on her so that she may be made well and alive." Imagine the intensity of this man's prayer. My little daughter is almost dead, but I believe you. Will you come and lay your hands on her so she might get well? Well, Jesus was full of compassion, and so it says he went with him. But there was a great crowd that was following them, because there were crowds that followed Jesus everywhere that he went. And in that crowd, there was a woman who had been bleeding for 12 years. And she'd been to every doctor. Nobody made her any better, and it had cost her all the money that she had. But she had heard about Jesus. And the Amplified Bible says she kept saying to herself, if I can only touch the hem of his garment, I know I shall be healed. I love that. You know, if you're going to talk to yourself, you might as well talk about something positive. I believe if I can just get to Jesus and touch him, that I shall be healed. And so he's on his way to heal this man's daughter who's almost dead, and now he stops to help somebody else. Think about how that would make you feel. Think about if you were Jairus, what kind of doubt and fear would have attacked your mind at that time. When she touched Jesus, immediately the flow of blood dried up, and she felt in her body that she was healed of her disease. And Jesus felt the power go out of him. This power of God is a real thing. It's a tangible thing. You know when the power of God is working in your life. And Jesus turned to the crowd and said, "Who touched me?" Well, the disciples thought that was a foolish question. There's such a big crowd here. What do you mean, who touched you? There's all kinds of people touching you. But you know, this woman touched him with her faith. Can you touch God with your faith today and believe that no matter what kind of problem you have, that God is great enough to get you out of the mess and bring restoration into your life? But the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came with fear and trembling and fell down before him and told him the whole entire truth. And he said to her, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace." Your faith. Faith does things. Faith brings deliverance. Faith brings change. Faith brings healing. Faith brings that job that you need when there's no jobs to be had. While he was still speaking, someone came from Jairus' house and said, "Your daughter is dead. You don't need to trouble the master any longer." Oh my gosh. How did he feel? Jesus, why did you have to stop for her right now? I told you what a desperate situation I was in. I'm not saying that's what he said, but he might have felt like saying that. But now listen to this in verse 36. Mark 5:36. But overhearing, the Amplified Bible says, but ignoring what they said, Jesus said to the ruler of the synagogue, "Do not fear, only believe." Wow, he's asking, I mean, that's a lot. Just keep your eyes on Jesus. What does it say? I think it's Hebrews 12 that says, looking away from all that will distract unto Jesus, who is the author and the finisher of your faith. God didn't just start faith in you for something to leave you destitute and without an answer. He's the author and the finisher of your faith. But sometimes you need to keep believing when everything looks like nothing is going to work and you're never going to get what you ask God for. I just sense in my heart today that there are people who have given up your dream. There's people that the enemy has talked into, just forget it, it's never going to happen. Just forget it. You're just full of bright ideas. None of this is anything God spoke to you. Listen, turn your head off for a few minutes and go back and see what's in your heart. If you did miss it and you made a mistake, then admit it and say so. But if you say, no, I believe that that's what God wants to do. I believe this is something that God spoke to me. Then you need to stir your faith up today. Fan that flame that once burned on the inside of you and go back to saying, I believe God, and I don't care how long it takes, I'm not going to give up on God because I've got His word on this and He is faithful. So He allowed no one to follow Him except Peter and James and John. Now, why was that? You know what? Jesus was going to go in and raise this girl from the dead, and He didn't want a bunch of doubt and unbelief around Him. He wanted faith around Him. And you know what? When you're in a desperate situation and everything looks like nothing's going to work, you don't need a bunch of people around you that are... negative and always telling you what's not going to work. You need to surround yourself with positive people, people of faith, people that would encourage you and believe God with you. I know certain people, when I need somebody to pray, I know who to call, because they're not going to just say, oh, sure, I'll pray for you. I mean, they're going to pray. They're going to really pray, and I have confidence that God hears them. They came to the ruler's house, and there was a great commotion, people weeping and wailing loudly. And when he entered into them, he said, why are you making such a commotion? The child is not dead, but she's just sleeping. And they laughed at him. But look what he did. But he put them all outside. Once again, he got rid of the doubt and unbelief. He put them all outside and took the child's father and mother and those who were with him, Peter, James, and John, went to where the child... was, and of course, he raised her up. And she got up, made totally whole. You know what? Some of you could change your life if you would just simply get away from some of the negative, doubtful people that you hang around with all the time. You know, I can't stand negativity, and that's interesting because at one time in my life, I was a very negative person. I always say, if I thought 2 positive thoughts in a row, my brain got in a cramp. I mean, I had grown up around a negative father. He didn't trust anybody. He didn't like anybody. Everything had an ulterior motive. And I grew up being taught how to be negative and almost being made to feel foolish if I was ever positive. So it took a while for God to get me turned around. Dave and I had been married a short period of time, and he said to me, "Why are you always so negative?" And you know what I said to him? I said, "Well, if you don't expect anything good to happen, then you won't be disappointed when it doesn't." I'd had so many disappointments in my life, I thought I was protecting myself by believing for bad thoughts, for bad things. I actually had what the Bible calls in Proverbs 15:15, evil forebodings. There was always this feeling around me, kind of in my atmosphere, like I was waiting for the hammer to drop, so to speak. You need to be careful about letting yourself get into that situation. And so if you're having problems right now, don't let your friends be people that always just want to do nothing but talk about your problem, and then on top of that, talk negative about your problem. Surround yourself with people that will bring some joy, people that will make you laugh, people that will encourage you and tell you that God can do anything.